Now, a lot of time has passed after what happened, and many of those people who were aware of everything that happened disappeared. I can tell you about the events that happened to me in the cold tundra in the winter of 1949. Over the next year, they took me from one place to another. They interrogated me. I told them everything that they wanted to hear. Then they asked again. They listened. They took me to another place, and so on in a circle, an endless loop. After which I was simply thrown into prison for life as a traitor to the motherland. And even there, I filled out so many papers, put so many signatures that the fear of consequences for disclosing it still haunts me, even though I know that everyone has long forgotten about my existence. And even if I'm not already in my 7th decade, I don't have any relatives yet. Therefore, I have nothing left to fear anymore from anyone. I had to live on a prison bunk, but by chance, literally 4 months later, I somehow ended up on the amnesty list. And now the only thing I have to do is to tell you my story. But first things first, I understand perfectly well that my story is hard to believe, but all the events happened in reality. It happened at a time when all efforts were being made to develop the north of the now collapsed state, the USSR. I was one of the few who, of my own free will, in the post-war period, as part of geological groups, went to study the riches of the Putarana Plateau. After graduating from the institute, I was offered a job. For 6 or 7 months in a row, I had to work in the tundra, far in the north of our country. Then I was given 2 months of rest. The money that they offered was quite good, even for those times. Unlike my classmates, I never had time to start a family, so nothing held me back, and I agreed, without much thought into the matter. The work was not dusty. I was trained as a motor mechanic, and I even managed to do a little work. The basis of my work duties were flights as part of the geological group to points where I had to monitor equipment, mainly generators. Any geological station had on average 1 generator for its electrification. Believe me, it's extremely bad for geologists without electricity. And here we are not even talking about banal amenities. In winter, the temperature stays at -40 degrees. Wind gusts often reach 20 to 30 meters per second. You simply cannot survive here without heat. In the summer it's easier. If something goes wrong, without electricity for a day or two, it sucks, of course, but it is tolerable. And if it's winter, and it's here by the way, for almost 9 months, then it's a complete mess. We didn't have a spare one. Every kilogram counts when you deliver cargo to a point by helicopter, and the generator is a stupid thing, the size of a train car. But there weren't any serious problems during the short time I worked with it. Do your maintenance on time, keep an eye on the oil, and listen for knocking noises. Yes, a couple of times I had to disassemble it, freeze the snot in -40 degrees, and repair it using all available means to me. Once they sent people to the mainland for spare parts. Due to condensation, there was a water hammer. One connecting rod was bent. They waited for 4 weeks. There was no way faster to do it, but fortunately, it was only in the summer, so it did not matter too much. Overall, everything was quite boring. I entertained myself with whatever I could. Yes, and such was the time. Once, I remember, a new geologist arrived. Young, way younger than me even then. Let's ask everyone, under various pretexts, in which rivers there is gold. Either he will ask one in between, then the other. Well, when he asked me, I told him about a river, 15 kilometers from the camp. I said, I was fishing there. I saw something glittering at the bottom, but I'm not sure. I told him to take a bag, collect some soil, bring it to the camp, and then we will sift it in secret from everyone, and see if there is anything there or not. So this fool believed me. He actually went to the river, dragged a bag of earth across the entire tundra, and he collected quite a lot out of greed. He brought it. We sifted it. Well, here I admit it was unnecessary. I quietly poured copper shavings into the ground for him. He stumbled upon her, shiny, eyes worth 5 cents, so joyful. And then he disappeared for 3 days. When they were about to organize a search, I told them this story. We went along the river and we found him. All these 3 days, he searched for gold in the river, but he did not find anything. But he also did not want to return empty. He didn't talk to me anymore after that, and then he flew away completely. No one forced me to sit in one place around the clock, so while the other geologists were doing their thing, I had other entertainment lined up. I drove across the tundra in search of fish lakes. There were plenty of fish there. Of course, for 100 kilometers, there was not a single living soul. There were only dwarf trees and small mountains. Having agreed with the authorities, I left for 2 to 3 days, making sure to take with me some food, matches, a gun. I had absolutely no desire to meet a bear or wolverine without it. A compass, a tent, a sleeping bag, a small folding drill, and fishing rods, of course, with a set of jigs. I loaded the whole thing into a snowmobile and left. The main problem in the tundra, for those who are there for the first time, is that it seems almost impossible to get lost in it. High mountains can be seen from afar. Low trees do not interfere with the view. Landmarks can be seen several kilometers away. But this is all complete nonsense. Endless fields of dwarf trees and the same mountain range, that is all. You can wander endlessly in search of the place from which you came. People manage to get lost simply in banal situations. One summer, 2 avid fishermen went out into the middle of the lake, went fishing, and there were 4 mountains around the lake. They all looked the exact same. They swam to one, looked at the shore. It was not from here that they swam, to the other shore. Bah, and not from here either. And the lake is very small. Let's swim along the shore and look for traces. It's a good summer polar day. It's light for almost 24 hours. Still, after 6, or maybe even 7 hours, the tired friends found the place where the boat was being inflated, and then, absolutely by accident, one of the fishermen crushed an empty pack of cigarettes and threw it on the shore before getting into the boat. That's how they found the right place in the end, but it took them so many hours. It would not be clear how long they would have wandered. Everything is so identical and endless that you are simply amazed. Sometimes, when you are driving in a straight line, it begins to seem that you have already seen it all and are driving in circles. A stupid feeling of déjà vu. The main thing here is that you should under no circumstances deviate from the path. So that time, having loaded a simple set of necessary things into a snowmobile, leaving the geological camp behind me, I rushed off into the tundra in search of a good fishing lake. According to my calculations, in the place where I wanted to fish, there should have been good-sized pike. I really wanted to surprise my colleague with a notable catch. Literally a few hours later, I was already approaching that same fatal lake, which I subsequently showed to hundreds of people. Both military personnel of various ranks and scientists, but that time I saw it for the first time. Not to say that it was somehow externally different from hundreds of other lakes scattered throughout the tundra, so all subsequent events were nothing more than an evil fate, just pure chance. I often return to this moment in my thoughts during all those long years spent in prison. Why me? What is the probability that in God-forsaken places among hundreds of identical lakes, one single person will find exactly this? But I digress. At this time of year, the lakes froze at least a meter deep, so I fearlessly drove my snowmobile almost into the middle. And then the ice cracked. The snowmobile instantly fell into the crevice, and so did I. Inwardly, I prepared to swim out of the icy water, but instead, I felt myself falling into the void. Before hitting the ice and losing consciousness, I understood only one thing. There was no water under the ice, and it wasn't a lake at all, but an ice cap, hanging like a bubble over some kind of cave. I don't know how long I lay unconscious for, but judging by the fact that I didn't have time to freeze anything, I must have woken up almost instantly. The cave in which I found myself was about 6 or 7 meters deep, and the frozen water, which I took for a lake, formed a kind of thin ice roof through which light, albeit weakly, still broke through. First of all, I looked around, and, although I was raised by atheist parents, I crossed myself. Next to the place where I fell, there was an even deeper abyss, into which, apparently, my snowmobile fell, along with all of my things. Without getting up, I carefully crawled away from the edge, after which I began to think about what I should do next. The situation was far from looking good. Without weapons and a means of transportation, even if I got out of this cave, the chance that I would get back to the camp was damn small. I checked the contents of my pockets, the matches hidden in my bosom and carefully wrapped in fabric that protected them from moisture, were in place. The flask of alcohol, which I had carefully placed the day before in the inner pocket of my jacket, was also not gone. Well, that was already something. Having torn off a piece of rag, wrapped it around some kind of stick, which I found not far from the place of my fall, and poured alcohol on a rag. I got some kind of light source. When I lit this makeshift torch, I set out fully armed to explore the place in which I found myself. The entire bottom of the cave was covered with a layer of specific debris. Some branches, driftwood, small stones, and frost-covered remains of vegetation that had not rotted due to permafrost indicated that there was once water here and that this place really was a lake. At the same time, the crust of ice under which I fell must have appeared precisely at that moment. That is, in the summer, there was water in the lake, but in the winter, after the cap froze, it went somewhere else. Perhaps the water flowed into the same fault where my snowmobile fell through. It was all strange to say the least. The Putarana Plateau is monolithic, the nearest junctions of the Earth's plates, due to which an earthquake or some other cataclysm could occur that could lead to such consequences as rock collapse, are so far away. They are so far away that it was easier to believe in fairy tale giants or huge mammoths that collapsed the voids into the lake, rather than the fact that this event happened on its own. Puzzled, I went to explore the cave further. I tried to step carefully. Some accidental dislocation of my leg due to an absurd fall on slippery stones would be enough to remain in this place forever. However, I did not forget that I had to get out as quickly as possible, because the chance of freezing here, underground, was much higher than on the surface. Some time passed, maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. The situation began to seem more and more hopeless to me. In the section of the bottom of the lake where I found myself, there was no way to get back to the surface. On one side, there was a collapse. On the other, there was an almost vertical section of rock. One way or another, I was trapped. I examined the rock, looking for a place where I could climb up, although I did not know what I would do, even if I found one. After all, there was a thick layer of ice up there, and it was almost impossible, even theoretically, to break through it without falling from a plumb line and without bringing down tons of frozen water on yourself. However, at some point, I discovered a small, narrow hole, and lo and behold, the flame of my torch, brought to this hole, began to sway. So, somewhere there could be a way up. Until that moment, I did not even know that there was such a word, claustrophobia. I was not then enlightened in these smart-ass bourgeois terms. However, I remember those feelings with horror. I crawled. The hole narrowed and narrowed. Sharp rocks caught my clothes, scratching my hands, tearing off pieces of fabric and pressing me with their entire mass. Light no longer penetrated here. The only thing I prayed to all the gods for was that at that moment that the weak fire of my torch would not go out right here, leaving me alone with impenetrable darkness in this hellish darkness. I don't know how much time passed, but at some point, exhausted, I literally fell into a room so wide that the fire of my torch could not snatch either the walls or the ceiling from the darkness. Only darkness around, and I, alone and tired, in the middle of it. My heart was beating wildly. My blood was pounding in my temples. I was glad that I was able to get out of that hole alive. At the same time, I was scared. I do not know what awaited me ahead. Thoughts in my head interrupted each other. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. Maybe, by going deeper into the cave, I am only dooming myself to an inevitable death. Maybe it's worth staying in place and waiting for the moment until they catch me, find me, and save me. After all, they missed that guy, the other geologist, and found him. Yes, it will be difficult for me to hold out for 3 days, but it is still possible. When there is fire and ice, you can only hold out on water for at least a week, but I definitely did not want to go back. I don't like the prospect of climbing back through that damn hole to such an extent that I was more determined to die than to climb back. With this thought, I eagerly began to study the room in which I found myself. I walked along the wall, highlighting the further path for myself with a torch. Just a few minutes later, I came across him. I did not immediately understand what I was dealing with. Only after a few minutes, along with a wave of fear, had it began to dawn on my mind what I had found. The skeleton of a creature lay against the wall. At first, it looked like the remains of some large animal, like a deer, but after examining it more closely, I began to feel myself covered in sticky sweat from head to toe. The creature's head definitely had dog-like features. Despite the permafrost, the tissue was damaged, as if the creature was burning alive. The fact that it had been dead for a long time was undeniable. The right side of its body had practically grown into the ice that covered the walls of the cave. The body of the creature had human features. The limbs had 6 fingers. The height of this creature was approximately 2.5 meters, and it was also dressed. Scraps of fabric, faded over time, covered the creature's body. During life, it wore something like a woman's skirt and some kind of cape over its body. There was some kind of decoration on the creature's neck. For a long time, I did not dare to touch the corpse. But still, my curiosity prevailed. I carefully removed the decoration from the frozen body and examined it. There were some patterns on it, similar to writing, inscribed around the image of some kind of beast with 7 limbs. At that moment, I experienced the most mixed feelings in my life. There was fear, pride, and curiosity, of course. I held in my hands proof that there is, or was, a hitherto unexplored race on our planet. It was a huge scientific breakthrough, and it was not just made by anyone, but it was made by me. This is at least an order and an all-union glory. At that moment, when I wanted to take a closer look at the corpse of this incomprehensible creature, my thoughts were interrupted by some kind of rumble. It came from afar. At that second, I could not be firmly sure that it did not appear to me, because before there, for a long time, being in complete silence of the cave, I could only hear the echo of my own steps and the pounding of my heart in my ears. Inspired by my discovery, I was already imagining how this cave would be named after me, and maybe even some street. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I went in the direction where I thought the sound was coming from. With every step I took, I became more and more convinced that the sound similar to the beating of drums was not a figment of my imagination. I followed the sound, and then, flashing for the last time, my torch went out. At first I was scared. However, after standing for several minutes in complete darkness, I saw a faint flicker of light in the depths of the cave. My first thought was that this was finally the way out. But when, carefully, trying not to stumble, I began to make my way closer to the source of light, it became clear that what I had saw had nothing to do with daylight. Moreover, the sound of the beating of drums intensified the closer I got into this light. Everything that followed was simply imprinted in my memory. As soon as I approached the light source, I realized that I was on a hill from which I could clearly see what was happening in a small area of the cave, which was about 5 meters below me. This area was illuminated by a fire, which, for some reason, burned with a blue flame. Next to me, silhouettes danced like shadows, in which I recognized creatures. The corpse of one which I had seen earlier. The drumming seemed to intensify. No matter how hard I tried, I could not discern the source of the sound. At that moment, I should have left, run away, hidden far away from this place, but the feeling of fear gave way to curiosity. I peered at the silhouettes of strange creatures that wriggled unnaturally in the blue light of this inhuman fire. They either shook, as if in a painful fit, or froze, raising their long paws or arms, God knows what they had, up. They bared their mouths, ran on all fours, fell and got up. Soon, I saw something that I could not see in the dark before. They were next to a huge hole, like the one my snowmobile fell into, only much larger. It started almost next to the fire, and stretched so far that I could not see that there was no end at all, no edge. I looked at it all as if spellbound. I could not move or breathe. And then, suddenly, the figures froze. The drumming stopped. The figures began to whine and growl. It did not sound like a dog's or a wolf's roar. It was unlike any animal I had ever known. At some point, I began to distinguish words. They said things that I couldn't even really type out or comprehend, just the same thing over and over again. The echo echoed them. It spread like a wild roar throughout the cave, the same sounds and noises and words again and again. The terrible wheezing seemed to sound so loud that I could not hear my own thoughts. And then something happened that I still have nightmares about. Abruptly, as if by a wave of the baton of an unknown conductor, the creatures fell silent. For a second, the silence rang in my ears. From somewhere in the hole next to which the creature stood, an eerie, unlike anything else sound was heard. It was as if someone had blown into a huge, inhumanly large horn. And then, out of the hole it appeared. There was too damn little light from the fire to make out his features. It was so huge that even without seeing it, I physically felt that this crap was just crawling out from everywhere. I don't know what kind of creature it was, but at that moment, something clicked in my head and I screamed. The creatures below immediately turned to look at me. I just felt like I was being pierced by dozens of glances. And after that I took off. Into the darkness somewhere, blind as a puppy, not thinking that I might stumble and fall, not understanding, in principle, where I need to move. The only goal was to escape from whatever those things were, that creature. What was lurking for who knows how long at the bottom of the cave. I ran, fell, got up. I heard the sounds of footsteps behind me. I heard the wheezing and howling of these creatures. Tears rolled down my eyes. Everything that happened next was preserved in my memory in fragments, as if I was dead drunk. I remember seeing the light. I remember running towards it, stumbling, not feeling pain, with only one desire, to be away from this cave, away from this place. I remember how, scratching the ice with my hands, in just a few leaps, like a dashing athlete, I climbed almost a sheer cliff. How, having got out, I, without stopping for a second, ran wherever my eyes looked to. That night I spent almost sleepless, warming myself by the fire and hearing the footsteps of my pursuers in every rustle. And when, a few days later, they finally found me, I was afraid of dogs for a long time, simply in a panic. You already know everything that happened next. I, of course, would like this all to be some stupid figment of my imagination, but the artifacts that I took with me from that cave, despite the fact that they were taken from me almost immediately, still convinced me that everything I saw was real. After that, I was taken to this place several times. A whole bunch of military men wandered around these caves, studying them up and down, and God knows, I have no idea what they found there. We may never know, but at least I did what I wanted to do, to tell my story, which no one needed to know. To this day, I wonder what those things are that I met in the cave that day. Millions of kilometers of Earth, endless expanses of Earth, where even until now, in the era of space exploration, no human has ever set foot. Hundreds of the same caves, hidden from the eyes of people. We are afraid of aliens and want to find intelligent life on other planets, while only God knows what secrets our own planet is hiding from us in the depths. Alright, I promised, and now I will deliver. Just for reference, I'm currently 20 years old, but at the time of the story I was 18, just around the time COVID started getting bad. Once again, not great at Greentext, deal with it. Be me 18, and school means nothing, because COVID basically gave me a free pass to graduate, as I no longer was forced into doing the curriculum. Decide I want to go in a woods and be away from society for a while. Decide to go to some BLM land and mess around. Bureau of Land Management, for you who don't have it in other states. It's basically open land to camp on and etc., but not any facilities for modern luxuries. Have a terrible shotgun in 20 gauge, and decide to bring it along. Also convince my girlfriend, who's 3 years older than me, to buy a pistol and let me borrow it for the trip. Base Jericho 941FS in 9mm for those who care. Did not want to get assaulted by homeless, so I kept it on me at all times. Camping, eating the baked beans and etc., normal stuff. No spooks just yet, or anything. Nights were peaceful and slept comfortably in my tent. A couple of days in, after deciding to go into town for the day, come back to my destroyed tent. Thankfully left nothing of value at my campsite, other than just my tent, cause setting it up is annoying. Oh well, I'll sleep in my car. I'm sure some homeless got mad after it was empty. Decide as well to not stay there, since not trying to get mugged in my sleep, or have my windows broken. Go to a less visited part of the land and stay there. Do nothing for the rest of the day, just be kinda bummed about tent, since it was pretty expensive. First night sleeping in car, have intense feeling of being watched, / something is near me. Shrug it off as just being spooked, since my tent got messed up. I have been camping since I was a baby, so not really scared of woods at night, since I am smarter than the average bear, and was in Boy Scouts since forever. Can't shrug feeling of being watched, so just take some melatonin and drift off into sleep. Wake up in a cold sweat, and swear for just a second, after I woke up, I saw eyes leering in through my window. Sit up and look around my car and see nothing at all. Assume it was just a hypnagogic hallucination from my groggy mind. After calming myself down, fall back asleep. Wake up and step outside my car to pee and set up my camp stove for breakfast. After starting to boil some water for oatmeal, look at my car to see a giant scratch all along the side, as if someone keyed my car in my sleep. Get even more mad as I start feeling that this trip is cursed to ruin all of my stuff. Eat, and nothing out of the ordinary happens again until nightfall. Up reading one of those military survival books, pick related, in car with flashlight, cause I don't want to run my car or maintain a fire. Hear a deaf squeal from a rabbit, and freak as I hadn't even encountered a small animal other than hearing random bird calls until now. Assume a coyote or something has done well to hide, and so I step outside of my car and yell to scare anything away from my camp. Immediately hear a quite angry sounding screech. Screw that. Hop back in my car and lock doors, recheck my pistol, and pull my shotgun out from under back seat. Stay up for a considerable time, checking my watch every couple of minutes. Eventually decide I'm just being a pussy and should just sleep but keep my shotgun by my side. Sleepy times. Wake up from my car bouncing up and down as if someone is walking on my car. What the hell? Immediately hop up and look at HUD and trunk, not seeing anything at all. Huh. Check my 360 radius and see nothing. Suddenly, it's as if a sharp nail is tapping methodically against my roof. This guy thinks he can spook me, hell no. Grab shotgun and put my back to door and push it open to blast this guy on my roof. Fall on ground and try to acquire target, but nothing is on my car. Think someone might be in woods, throwing rocks, so I grab my flashlight and pan around, looking for someone. Nothing at all. Screw this. Hop in car and stay up until dawn. I am not leaving until daylight, but also not trying to get murdered by hobos. Finally daylight approaches, and I hop out and collect my garbage and assorted junk from around my new site. At this point, I am so tired of getting messed with, I decide to unreasonably hunt this dude messing with me. Decide to find another campsite, but set up a decoy sleeping area as if I were going to sleep under the stars instead of my car. Set random stuff up under a blanket, and make a campfire / roll a log seat to make it look legit. Once again, hear and see nothing until nightfall. Incognito anon time, I'm hiding in my car, barely able to see the decoy sleeping area. It is around midnight when I see a large man walk over to the decoy bed with some type of cudgel in his hand, start whacking the decoy. Splinter cell conviction time as I pop out shotgun in hand with handgun tucked into pants. Remember how I said my shotgun was terrible? Pull trigger, click, nothing. The gun does not goddamn fire. I am about 6'2", pretty lean, at 165 pounds. Man is easily 7 feet or taller. Definitely not a goat man or skinwalker, but this guy is ugly as all hell. Smells of crap, and ironically copper for not being a skinwalker. Looks almost Neanderthal in nature, and his large club does not help the comparison in my head. Drop my gun and whip out the pistol, putting terrible shots in stomach area and whiffed one into the club arm. Hear that terrible screech from the other night and connect the dots. Screw this, I'm leaving. Funnily and luckily enough, we both retreat, him into the woods and me back into my car. Drive 90 till in town, not really able to sleep that night. After my sleepless night, I don't end up returning to my campsite until the morning. Thankfully, everything is there, all of my stuff. The shotgun that I dropped onto the ground is still there as well, but it's smashed. Oh well. Blanket and my other random junk is also all messed up. God damn it, that's like $500 worth of stuff, all ruined. I end up collecting what I can, and Scout's honor, leave no trace, cleaning up all the mess that I made. Figure that the police won't help, so just go home, dumbfounded at my interaction with this caveman. I ended up telling my girlfriend, and she does not believe me at all. Thinks I took acid or something, and had a crazy last night of hallucinations. No satisfying ending. Never heard of a caveman or druggie found dead, or anything like that around here. Sometimes still hear the tapping on the roof of my car in the early morning or late at night when I'm parked out, but it's not like it followed me home. TLDR, Inner Woods Anon meets caveman and ruins most of his camping kit by deciding to hunt it. So, what do y'all think? Did I encounter a crazy tall druggie or homeless person or a legit caveman? By the way, homie looked like that Geico caveman, pic related. Guys, I'm very skeptical and whatnot. Not an ex-person at all, but I have one weird story that happened to me a long time ago. In field trip with my class, walking with two friends away from others, in the middle of some sort of forest. I am hating all this stuff. I turn around and look at the leaves up in the tree and the way the sun touched them. Next thing I remember is me being approached by two girls from my class. I'm looking up the same way, but in a different location. We were looking for you. Can't understand what is going on. My mind is blank. Follow the girls back to where class is. The whole class was looking for me. Emergency personnel called. They take my blood pressure or something like that. My two buddies said I vanished when they were not looking. There is no way this is some sort of joke. They would not call the emergency number. What the hell is going on? Freaked out. I can't remember anything at all. Mind is blank. Sometime later, I remember something about that day. It felt like some sort of weird dream. I was first in some sort of weird library, and then I was in some sort of forest, but completely different from the one that I was in before. The trees are absurdly big and tall. The forest is dark, like there is no sunlight getting through the canopies. Hear some sort of animal screams from far away. There is so much space between the trees that it looked like a large road. Then I was back with the two girls approaching me. To this day, I have no idea what in the actual hell happened. I questioned my two friends many times, but they said that when they looked back, I was not there anymore, and that was all that they could say. They didn't hear me or see me do anything.